The Tokyo drift cars are expensive, glamorous, and most notably fast. But how much would it cost for you to buy the Mazda RX7 or the Mitsubishi Evo IX? However, before we talk more about the JDM cars of the movie, let me ask, do you remember that car that Sean Boswell used to race Takashi down the mountain? Well, that vehicle was a 1967 Mustang Fastback, and this is definitely one of the more expensive cars in the movie. However, this isn't your typical Mustang. It's elegant, fast, and an absolute machine, and I really mean it. If we take a look under the hood, we can find a 2.6-litre twin-turbo RB26 from the Nissan GTR, instead of having its typical Mustang V8. The GTR engine has about 375 horsepower, which isn't bad for an old Mustang that should have a V8. And if you're looking to own one of these yourself, plan to spend about $180,000 with all the upgrades included. That being said, there are 6 of these in the film, which leads us to estimate a whopping $1,080,000 in total. Which leads us to our next car on this list. 1971 Chevrolet Monte Carlo. You see, the Mustang Fastback isn't the only piece of classic American muscle cars in the collection. He's also got himself a sick cream coloured 71 Monte Carlo, and unfortunately, this car didn't last too long in the movie, as the one scene it's featured in shows the beauty being smashed with a baseball bat. However, the vehicle gets some sweet revenge in the scene showing the Monte Carlo beating Clay's Dodge Viper in a race that completely destroys the house and construction site. It's a bummer this car went down, because it truly was decked out with a 632 cubic inch big block under the hood linked to a T10 4-speed transmission. And while these cars don't go for too much, being valued at about $15,000 to $25,000, the producers bought 9 of these, which leads to a total of $150,000 spent on Montes. Well, that's enough for the American cars. Let's get into some of the Japanese machines in the movie. Silvia Spec R. As from the title, Japanese cars are the stars of the film, and it seems that one particular brand became a favourite. Sean gets his hands on a Silvia Spec R. Although it's a bit basic and the producers didn't do too much to deck out this vehicle, which is probably why it goes down very early in the movie, needless to say, it was probably for the best they didn't put too much down on this vehicle. But in Japan, these things go for about $10,000 to $20,000. But if you're living in the USA, you actually are not able to get your hands on one of these, which makes it stand out as one of the rarer ones. Nissan Skyline GTR. Now, our next car on this list was driven in a drifting competition by some girls that Han took an attempt at impressing in a scene in the movie. Sure enough, Han pulls off an impressive 360-degree drift in a Mazda RX7. But the real beauty of this scene is the car driven by the ladies, this sweet Nissan Skyline GTR R33. And although the car was left pretty unmodified, you'd have to admit it's pretty darn cool. It also sits on some 19-inch Vogue racing wheels, and in the States, you can look to spend about 50 grand on one of these. Mazda RX8. Next up, we have the classic Mazda RX8. Hooked up with a veal-side body kit that Neela drifts on the side of a mountain, a nail-biting scene for sure, the RX8 was decked out with a Renesis 1.3-litre 13B rotary engine, a gritty turbo kit, and engine management system. With all that, you can expect much more than the standard 228 horsepower this car provides in the base model. Sure, it may not be the steeziest of cars, but it's definitely a classic. '97 Mazda RX7 FD. Let's toss the girly RX8 aside and take a look at this '97 RX7 driven by Han in the movie. And while this car in stock has some style to it already, the producers went an extra mile. Yes, it was an authentic veal-side Fortune RX7 with a 17,000 wide body kit that added an entire foot of width to the car. On top of that, there was an HKS TO4Z turbo kit, HKS intercooler Apexi engine management, which allowed this car to push between 300 and 400 horsepower. It also had a fuel exhaust in wheels, numerous interior and suspension upgrades, and the list goes on and on. All in all, a used '97 RX7 cost you about 30 grand, but with the upgrades you're looking at an extra 60 grand. So together, this car is worth a whopping $90,000. The Mitsubishi Lancer Evo IX. So let's take it back to the scene where Sean totals Han Sylvia in the race against Takashi. After wrecking the vehicle completely, he's given a brand new Mitsubishi Lancer Evo IX. This vehicle is amazing, equipped with sick new wheels, and Sean becomes certified drift expert, winning every drift race. And no, this definitely was not a stock model. The producers set up this car for sliding on the street, detaching the front drive shaft so the car could transform into a rear-wheel drift machine. They also decked it out with an APR body kit and rear race wings, as well as some 19-inch wheels wrapped with Toyo tires. So how much did this beauty cost? Well, the stock Lancer Evo IX typically sells for 20 to 25 grand, but that's obviously without all the mods. However, from what they did in the movie, it might not have actually costed that much to mod, even though it looks completely different than the stock, which brings us to an estimated 50 grand total. Volkswagen Golf R32. This next car you may not have even noticed, but it's Rico's Volkswagen Golf R32. This car was actually filmed for the movie, but the scene it was in was deleted. We thought it'd be worth mentioning though, because this certainly isn't any normal Golf. What makes this special is that it has custom doors, rear-wheel drive for drifting purposes, and although this car looks like it's decked out with a lot of money invested into it, overall this car cost about $25,000. Honestly, that's a steal compared to some of the cars on this list. Nissan Fairlady Z33. Our next car on the list is essentially the villain of the movie. The Fairlady is a unique vehicle with a unique name, but it's extremely powerful, probably the most powerful car in Tokyo Drift, packing a 3.5 litre 24-valve V6 with stainless headers and turbo exhaust to spit out a whopping 460 horsepower. It's got a veal-side body kit and a carbon fibre hood with a rear wing, not to mention an amazing paint job. Overall, this car won't run you cheap, as it was estimated that 130 grand was put into the car to modify it and make it how it was in the film. 70 Plymouth Roadrunner. And for our last car on the list, you may have actually missed this one in the movie as well. But at the end of the Tokyo Drift film, the producers brought in a surprise appearance, a 70 Plymouth Roadrunner that Dom won from Han a few years back. This classic muscle car is painted grey with matte black wheels. You may recognise this bad boy because it appears in other Fast and Furious movies. Believe it or not, this car survived and still kicks to this day, selling for $187,000. It's pretty obvious they chose such a muscular car for a muscular man like Vin Diesel. So with that being said, if we add up the value of all the cars in this movie, you'll be looking at roughly $1,072,000 in total. Now that's a lot of money, but the movie itself is priceless. Be sure to drop a comment down below